What's up, all my movie-loving maniacs? This your boy Bangfo B, and welcome back to the 2025 Lassiter Factor Halloween special. The special where I review nothing but scary movies for the Halloween season. And today I'm going to talk about Casper, which is now celebrating its 30th anniversary and was released in theaters over the weekend. So let's review. So Casper is more or less a live action adaptation of the cartoon or comic strip, whichever you're more attached to. Either way, it's a live action adaptation about Casper the friendly ghost and his crazy ass uncle. Casper wants a friend, and so he comes across a therapist and his daughter. The therapist basically treats ghosts, and they come across this house that Casper and his uncles have lived in for quite some time. And so when the father and daughter they come to this castle and they befriend one another. But they are also there because this lady named Kerrigan, she wants them to get the ghost out of the house because there is some riches within the house that she's trying to get. Right off the bat, I will just say that Casper is a very nostalgic movie for me. I had this movie on VHS back in the day. I would wear this VHS tape out, and even though I never really saw the cartoon or the comic strip, the movie is essentially or was my introduction to Casper, and it's what basically made me a fan of Casper. It is because of this movie why there was a resurgence of this character back in the 90s, and there were VHSs and movies about this character, even a cartoon. I do remember watching the cartoon The Spectacular Adventures of Casper. I think it was on Fox Kids back in the day. For A Spirited Beginning was also another movie that I had on VHS back in the day and that I would wear out. Meets Wendy is another one, which had Hilary Duff. Deep cut, if you know. And going back to The Spectacular Adventures of Casper, I had the Christmas VHS that would glow in the dark. I don't have it anymore, but I wish I did because that thing was cool, and it also came with a couple of extra cartoons. But it's because of this movie that came out in 1995 why there was a resurgence of Casper the Friendly Ghost back in the day, and some people that grew up on this movie still remember it. Movie came out during the time when Hollywood was just remaking cartoon or classic cartoons that came out during the 50s, 60s, 70s. How I feel about this movie 30 years later, I still love it. Even without the nostalgia, I think this movie still holds up. I just like the structure of this movie and how it starts off with Kerrigan and her lawyer, whoever that is. He's played by Eric Idle, but basically she has willed a house that Casper is haunting, and there's riches in there, and she's trying to get in there. But of course, his uncles is scaring them out of the house and basically haunting it, and so she takes drastic measures. Even when we get down. Pullman, who is a former therapist, but he's trying to search for his wife, who is deceased, and he feels like ghosts are just, as he said, they have unfinished business, and he thinks his wife has some unfinished business, and his wife is still out there somewhere, and so he goes on the road. He goes on the road haunting, well, not haunting, but giving ghost therapy, and then he's hired to go to Maine to the house that Catherine and his uncles are in, and to try to get him out the house. And he brings his daughter, played by a young Christina Ricci. They live in the house. They befriend the ghost. Granted, the ghostly trio, the uncles, they're not for it at first, but then they begin to warm up to him. The heart and soul of this movie is Casper and Kat, and they form an unlikely friendship. And Casper, he does, and I just like how Casper, he doesn't remember his life before he became a ghost, and he begins to remember little by little with the help of Kat, and they even come across the Lazarus machine that's basically in the basement of this castle, and it was a machine that his father built to help bring his son back to life. And really, once you hear the backstory of Casper, it's really tragic. Now, granted, this movie isn't perfect. I know some people, especially back in the day, might have had some issues with this movie, but regardless of how you feel about this movie, you must praise the visual effects. And this is one of the reasons why I think this movie still holds up, because the visual effects they used to bring ghosts to life, like, to me, this is still impressive right here. Even watching it on a Blu-ray or 4K, however the case, I think this effect still holds up. And of course, the ghostly trio, Stretch, Fatso, and Sticky. They're horrible and rotten, but god dang it, I love them. They are hilarious. Back to Kerrigan and Dibbs, played by Eric Idle. They, like I said, they take drastic measures, even right down to a cameo by Dan Aykroyd as a Ghostbuster. That's, to me, for a long time, that was the closest we'll ever get to a third Ghostbusters movie. But I just like how they hired him, and then he comes out talking about who are you gonna call? Someone else, and then just runs off. On how big of a Casper fan you are, there's a lot to love and admire about this movie. And aside from the special effects, but what really makes this movie hold up for me is just the themes of grief, the concepts of the afterlife, and crossing over and learning to move on and learning why ghosts can't just cross over into the other life because they have unfinished business. And we don't know what Casper's unfinished business is in this movie. Granted, I think we kind of, well, they kind of address it in the movie, but even that's not his unfinished business. Emphasis on grief and moving on because, like I said, Bill Pullman's character, he is trying to look for his wife. Comes to him and Casper before this movie in the form of some angel ghost, and she tells him straight up, like, look, y'all loved me so much when I was alive that I have no unfinished business, so please don't make me mine. I just felt like this was one of the most beautiful things within this movie. Even when she comes to Casper and she tells him, like, look, you could have used a machine on yourself, but you didn't, because at that point, Bill Pullman's character, he had turned into a ghost, and so he had to use a machine to come back to life because Kat needs her father, and the angel ghost, she recognizes that, and so Casper, I'll throw you a bone. You can be a human for a couple of hours just so you can dance with my daughter. Absolutely love this movie. It's a childhood favorite of mine, and if you haven't seen it, go see it, particularly in the theater while it's re-released. It's actually one of the few movies that I actually wouldn't mind seeing a modern take on or a modern movie on. To give Casper the hard eyes emoji. Y'all so much for watching. Have you seen Casper? If so, do you think it still holds up? Let me know in the comment section below, and be on the lookout for more reviews of the Lassiter Halloween special. This is your boy Bankful B. Stay safe, wash your hands, peace.